Do your D&D encounters need a kick in the pants? Something to jazz them up and make them more exciting for your players? In this video, I will talk about 3 fundamentals of encounter building. Following these guidelines will help you create fun and engaging encounters for your players. Hey, Luke Hart here. Today we are talking encounter building. And just in case you're new to my channel, I have been a Dungeon Master since high school, and I create weekly D&D videos with information and resources to help Dungeon Masters run awesome games. Alright, first things first, there is a lot that I want to share with you about encounter building. And I think it's probably a lot more than I'm going to be able to share in one video, especially since I like to go in depth and give you practical examples of things. So I will be doing an entire encounter building series for you all. Now, this is the first video in that series, and what I'm going to do is give you an overview of what I consider to be the 3 fundamentals of encounter building. And then in subsequent videos, I will go more in depth on each of those fundamentals. Oh, and as always, remember that I will have a special DM bonus tip for you at the very end of the video. Fundamental number 1, location and terrain. Every encounter takes place somewhere, obviously, but it's important to have information and details about those locations. First of all, the location influences the type of creature that might even be there. Are you deep underground? Well, then you might have Dwarger, or Drow, or other underground monstrosities. In a dungeon? Well, then maybe orcs, or hobgoblins, or oozes. How about a forest? Well, now we're talking owlbears and pixies and other woodland creatures. So this is actually a very good show and tell moment. This right here is an illustration of a pixie that my daughter drew for me. And you guys may have noticed that I have it over here in the background a lot of the times. Actually, I think all the time. So yeah, there you go, fun fact. Or maybe it's like a fairy. I don't know, but it's really cool. And terrain. Never overlook the importance of terrain, because there is nothing more boring than this. A grid and minis with no terrain? How lame is that? Assuming that we're in a dungeon, let's throw some walls and corridors and rooms here at the very least. Now how about some furniture and other interesting bits? Now, be honest, which terrain do you think that will be more interesting for your players to engage with? And it is not just because one looks cooler than the other. That furniture introduces options such as flipping the table over for cover. That chasm means players can shove enemies over the edge. A bridge? Well, cut the ropes while the enemies are standing on it. And of course, as the Dungeon Master, it means that you can do the exact same things. And obviously, the same concept applies if you're in a forest. Forests have bushes and trees and undergrowth and fallen logs. All of these things give your players options during encounters. So put them on the grid. And if you're playing Theory of the Mind, this still works. You simply, as the Dungeon Master, need to describe the terrain and make sure you make it an important part of the encounter. Chances are, if you have enemies make use of the terrain, your players will catch on and have their characters do the same. Alright, encounter fundamental number 2, monsters and NPCs. And you know, it's actually rather redundant to say monsters and NPCs because I view every monster, every creature in fact, in my game as an NPC. So let's just refer to them as creatures and call it a day. Anyway, point is, the creatures that you select for an encounter are very important. Thank you, Captain Obvious. I mean, I suppose you could have encounters that don't involve creatures, but most encounters do. The creatures that you choose for an encounter have a huge impact on whether the encounter is fun and memorable for your players or whether it's just another mindless combat. For instance, if you just plop one creature into a room with 4 or 5 PCs, then prepare yourself for a rather unsatisfying encounter. It's probably going to turn into a surround and pound with that creature going down in like 1 or 2 rounds, no matter what the CR of it is. And then you're gonna spend the next 5 minutes trying to get your players off their phones because they were bored out of their minds. However, deploying a group of creatures at the PCs is going to be much more interesting. What it does is shift action economy back to a middle ground, and having more combatants on the battlefield makes things more interesting as well. For instance, here you have the orc warriors engaging the fighters in the group. And then the orc archers are in the back line taking shots at the wizard and the cleric, while the orc shaman just wreaks general havoc. This scenario would most likely be much more interesting and engaging for your players than just throwing one big dumb troll down in the middle of them. Not that trolls are bad, I love a good troll. Try to use at least 2 different types of creatures in an encounter, and 3 is even better. It does put more work on you as the Dungeon Master to run more creature types, but it definitely makes encounters so much better. And what you want to do is avoid solo creature encounters, except in special circumstances. And then when you do that, make sure you adequately prepare so that it doesn't just turn into a lame surround and pound. There's a whole lot more that we could talk about regarding choosing creatures for your encounters and choosing creatures that are synergistic and work well together. It's out of the scope for this video, which is why we're doing an entire series. encounters. But if you would, let me know what type of information you would find useful for creating encounters, because I can probably incorporate that into a future video. All right, encounter fundamental number 3, the dramatic question. Will the heroes sneak past the giant spider and escape the dungeon? Will the heroes convince the satyr to cooperate? Will the heroes intimidate the goblins into giving them the relic they seek? Or will everybody just fight it out? Mass wholesale slaughter. You see, not every encounter in Dungeons & Dragons needs to be a fight to the death. In fact, some of the most memorable encounters from my games didn't involve fighting. But let's be real, it's Dungeons & Dragons, so a lot of them definitely did. The point is, every encounter should have a dramatic question similar to the ones I just posed. A dramatic question revolves around a conflict of interest between the characters and some other party. And it basically seeks to ask, will the heroes do X or accomplish Y? And you want to leave the dramatic question as open-ended as possible. That is, you don't want there to be only one solution to an encounter. Take the example with the goblins. The players can take a variety of approaches to get that sacred relic. Intimidate the goblins, persuade them, buy it from them, sneak in when they're sleeping and steal it from them, or just kill them and take it. I mean, they're just goblins. So a dramatic question shouldn't presume a certain course of action on the part of your players. Leave your encounters as open-ended as possible, with murder and death being only one of the possible solutions. Even though you and I both know that your players are almost assuredly just going to murder the goblins and take their stuffs, let your players be the ones to make that decision. It should be your players, not you, as the Dungeon Master, that decides how they overcome the encounters that you put in front of them. Now, you may have already noticed this, but if you go back to those 3 dramatic questions that I posed at the very beginning of this, you might notice that they're actually not very good dramatic questions because they presume a certain solution to the encounter. And a dramatic question should avoid doing that. But I'm lazy and I'm not changing them now, so you're just gonna have to deal with it and think up better ones for yourselves. By the way, in addition to making videos, I publish adventures and Dungeon Master resources over on DriveThruRPG. Some of them are pay what you want, free, and others are only a couple bucks. Link down below. All right, now it's time for the DM bonus tip. And I know you all waited with eager anticipation for this moment. And for the DM bonus tip, I am going to contradict a little bit of what I just got done saying in this video. Tweaking out every single encounter with cool terrain, carefully chosen enemies, and an awesome dramatic question can be a lot of work. So don't worry about it for every single encounter. It is okay for some of your encounters to just be so-so. Not every song a rock star sings is her very best. Make sure that you have several memorable encounters that follow the guidelines that I've talked about here. But for others, just throw some monsters in a room and call it a day. As always, if you have any questions about dungeon mastering, please let me know. I'm always happy to help. Smash that like button if you found this video helpful. Click here to subscribe, and over here you can watch some more fine videos. And until next time, let's play D&D.